السلام عليكم، متى تسمعوني؟ ما زال عندي مكتوب practice session. اعتقد قلتوا بتخلوني الاكسس عشان انا اقدر ادخل، لكن حاليا ما زال مكتوب عندي you are in a practice session. ما عندي الصلاحية اني افتح البث. ايوه تمام، لانه اظني قالوا ان تكونوا مشغولين بالدورة الثانية، بس بعدها ما بدت، صح؟ بعد العصر والان. طيب انا بشكل جاهز. انا جاهز لانه اوريدي وصلنا الوقت. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع سنته إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome again to another session of the Al-Adab al-Mufrad of Imam al-Bukhari. We had got to the last thing we mentioned, just to recap, is we were mentioning about dutifulness towards parents after their death. And this will be elaborated to some extent, even in this one. So now we're in chapter 20, charitable acts towards one whose father was charitable. Abdullah ibn Dinar said, Ibn Umar passed by a Bedouin during a journey. The Bedouin's father had been a friend of Umar's, may Allah be pleased with him. So he, Ibn Umar, asked the Bedouin, are you not the son of so-and-so? He said, yes, indeed. Ibn Umar ordered that he be given a donkey, which he took along on his journeys. He also took off his turban and gave it to the man. One of those with Ibn Umar said, wouldn't 2 dirhams be enough for him? Ibn Umar said, and this is the point here that this is being focused on in this hadith, is he said, when the man said to him, wouldn't 2 dirhams be enough? He said, Ibn Umar replied, the Prophet ﷺ said, maintain what your father loved. Do not sever it, otherwise Allah would put out your light. And this report, in fact, was authentically reported by Imam Muslim in his Sahih, Ahmad in his Musnad, and the author Al-Bukhari in the narration that follows immediately after this with some difference in his text. So Hadith 41, Ibn Umar said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the best form of dutifulness is that one maintains relations with the people one's father loved. And the commentary here mentions when Ibn Umar traveled, he took along a donkey which he rode wherever he got bored of a camel. He gave the man his turban and the donkey. The virtue of maintaining such relations with the beloved ones of one's father could be better taken bearing in mind that such relations bring about mentioning one's father with good and people praying for them. So it counts as from the child's kindness to his parents. And the hadith proves that good deeds are of categories. And just mentioning for some of the benefits that I personally wrote down from this lesson, which we study with Sheikh Aziz Farhan Al-Anazi, is all of the Sheikh mentioned that all of those friends of the parents, even the mother and father's parents, obviously if you're a different gender, doesn't mean you contact them directly and start speaking to them. It means you can, through your male relatives, you can pass on the salam, or you can remind your male relatives to go and say salam or pass by or see how the friends of your how your father or mother's friends, like that, or vice versa, if it's women, for example. It even goes as far as the scholars to say, even the friends of your grandparents, if they're still alive, you try and keep in contact from time to time and visit and be kind to those friends of even your grandparents, and even husband and wives friends. An example of that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to slaughter sheep. He used to slaughter a lamb, and he would give it to the friends of Khadija radiallahu anha. So his wife radiallahu anha, after she passed away, out of respect to her and her friends, he would go and slaughter a lamb and give it to her friends. And you can even do this in the lifetime. It doesn't mean only when the parents are dead. If you know now that there are friends, maybe your mother has some friends of hers, you can try and keep in contact with them, try and make your effort to be nice to them and to be friendly to them. Chapter 21, do not cut off relations with one who had ties with your father, otherwise your light would be put out. It is related from Sa'ad ibn Ubadah Zuraqi that his father said, I was sitting in the mosque of Medina with Amr ibn Uthman when Abdullah ibn Salam walked by us. He was leaning on his nephew. Abdullah bin Salam, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who was a respected Jewish rabbi before he became Muslim, passed through the assembly. Then he turned and said, do whatever you like. Amr bin Uthman, and he repeated this 2 or 3 times. By the one who sent Muhammad with the truth, it is in the book of Allah, the Mighty, meaning also in the Torah. And he said this twice, do not cut relations with those who had ties with your father, otherwise your light would be put out. Meaning you'll have no khair, no nur, no goodness. If your goodness, you'll be lacking in goodness. Chapter 22, love is inherited. It's related from a man who was one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that he said, it is enough that I tell you that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, love is inherited. Chapter 23. A man should not call his father by his name, nor sit down before he does, nor walk ahead of him. It is related from Urwa, or other than him, that Abu Hurairah saw 2 men and said to one of them, who is this man in relation to you? He said, he is my father. Abu Hurairah said, do not call him by his name, nor walk ahead of him, nor sit down before he does. The commentary mentioned here is that the child does that by way of honoring the parents. However, the child could walk ahead of him in circumstances where only doing so assures the child's safety. And something that the Sheikh also went in and emphasized, he mentioned from these things as well, apart from just walking in front of them, one should not keep asking things from parents, keep requesting. And we have that, we find as we're growing up as children, maybe sometimes teenage, maybe as young adults, we keep asking our parents for things. Maybe we're not quite self-dependent yet. So we put a lot of demands on our parents for things. And the scholars say this is one of the adab. Just like you wouldn't walk in front of them and give your back to them, you would not, or you wouldn't go and sit down before them. You'd open the door before them. You'd open the car door before them. All these kind of things. Likewise, you wouldn't keep asking them for things. Also, making dua for them in front of them. So you make dua for them, but you do this in front of them. You do this in front of them. Also, you don't mention their mistakes. And of course, you don't mention their mistakes in front of them, but it also means that you don't mention their mistakes to other people, as we mentioned before. And if you live away from them, you should continuously message them and keep in touch. Don't make the excuse that because you live so far that you'll call them once a month, or you'll wait till you go and visit them. Always try to be in regular contact with them. And modern day times, we have so many facilities like WhatsApp and Zoom, like we're using now, and all these things where you can, not only can you message them, you can actually see them and talk to them in most cases. Also, one should keep their voice down, the volume of their voice low when with them. And don't cut them off when you're talking to, when they're talking, don't cut them off. And don't treat them, or don't glare at them, and don't stare at them. And even the scholars say, don't eat and drink before them. So if you come together as a family, in a restaurant, at home, let your parents be the first to eat, not you start eating before them. I just wanted to mention from now, it's better if you have questions to ask from now, because today I will be finishing slightly shorter than normal, as there is some courses that are going on, some dawrah that's going on here in the UAE, which I would like to attend. So we may finish a bit earlier than normal by 5 or 10 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, it's best to type them from now, inshallah. Chapter 24. Can a man call his father by his kunya, by his nickname? Shahr ibn Hawshab said, we went out with Ibn Umar, and Salim, the son of Ibn Umar, said to him, as-salah, time for prayer, Abu Abdul Rahman, using his kunya. And Ibn Umar said, but Abu Hafs Umar decided. So he was mentioning a hadith, and the part of the hadith was mentioned that Ibn Umar said, who was the father of Umar, Abu Hafs, that was the nickname or the kunya of his father, Umar. So he said, but Abu Hafs Umar decided. So he called him by his kunya, by his nickname, or by his. So the kunya, the commentary mentions here that the kunya is a way of naming. It is a way of naming common among the pious predecessors, where a particular name, for example, Anas is prefixed by Abu or to mean the father of Anas or the mother of Anas, respectively. Taking the kunya is a means of showing respect for one another. The narration showed the permissibility to call one's father using his father's or using his kunya. So it's permissible for if your father is Abu Abdullah, Abdullah, to call them by that. There's no disrespect. It's not like calling them by their first name. That would obviously be an issue. Chapter 25, the duty of maintaining ties of kinship, keeping the relations with your family. And the scholars say they have made ijma'. There is all the scholars, no difference of opinion, that this is an obligation and wajib, a must. And the hadith mentions, Kulayb ibn Manfa'a said, my grandfather said, Messenger of Allah, towards whom should I be dutiful? He said, towards your mother, your father, your sister, and your brother, then towards your relative, the nearest to them. This is an obligatory duty, and those ties of kinship must be maintained. Another hadith, 48, Abu Hurairah said, when the following verse was revealed, warn your nearest relatives. The Prophet ﷺ rose and called out, Banu Ka'ab, Banu Lu'ay, save yourselves from the fire. Banu Abd Manaf, save yourselves from the fire. Banu Hashim, save yourselves from the fire. Banu Abdul Muttalib, save yourselves from the fire. Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, save yourself from the fire. I cannot alter Allah's decision about you if you deserve it, except for the fact that you have ties of kinship, which I shall maintain. So the commentary mentions here, the hadith orders maintaining ties with near relatives without restricting it to the Muslims among them alone. The Prophet ﷺ would quickly act upon the instructions of the Quran and give admonitions employing methods that depicted the importance of what he said. The hadith forms evidence that the Muslim could still relate himself to his fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and further above, whether they were Muslims or not. For the verse referred to some of the non-Muslim grandparents of the Messenger ﷺ and mentioned them as his near relatives. Everyone is enjoined to hasten towards acting upon good deeds and not depend nor take pride in family ties. Connecting family ties is emphasized in the hadith. And Sheikh Aziz, in the lesson I attended, he elaborated on this. He said there are certain types of relatives. Whoever is forbidden to you, meaning you can't marry them, those who inherit from you, and those who come from, those are considered genuine relations. And these are the three categories that generally you have to keep ties with. Those who are forbidden to you, ones you can't marry, like your mother, your sister, your aunt, your grandmother, these take precedence. Then those who inherit from you, like your children, etc. And then obviously parents also inherit. And then those who are relatives through those relations. So for example, grandparents, parents, your children, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins. These are the obligatory. The further away you go from that, it's more recommended, but not a must. But those mentioned ones are the ones that definitely, without doubt, should keep contact with them. Chapter 26, which I think we will end on today because these are quite long anyway. Just check the time actually. Yes, inshallah. Chapter 26, maintaining ties of kinship. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, a Bedouin, came to the Prophet ﷺ while he was traveling. He asked, tell me what will bring me near to the paradise and keep me away from the fire. And before I continue, again, this shows us the continuous thing we saw with the Sahaba, that they would always urge to ask. And they would always, they had this urge to know what was good. What will save me from the punishment of the hellfire? What will lead me to paradise? What will make Allah happy? What will displease happy? They always had this concern, and they always used to take care, and they always used to make sure that's something they always asked about. So this man, he came and he said, the Bedouin, tell me what will bring me near to the paradise and keep me away from the fire. The Prophet ﷺ replied, worship Allah and do not associate anything with him, and perform the prayer and pay the zakah and maintain ties of kinship. And what we see here, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ's humbleness, even though he was traveling, he didn't say to the man, I'm too busy, go away, I'm traveling. He was humble. He gave the man time and explained and answered the man's question. It also shows us that Tawheed, and these are the benefits of Sheikh Aziz, it also showed us that Tawheed is always the first thing we call upon and the first thing we make our da'wah about, calling to the oneness of Allah. And the commentary mentions here in the book, the hadith exhorts towards asking the scholars about what will bring one towards paradise and keep away from the hellfire. It warns against destroying one's acts of devotion by associating partners with Allah. Ibn Abi Hamza said, if they are non-Muslims and evildoers, disconnecting relations with them for the sake of Allah is the way to maintain ties with them on the condition that efforts will be made to admonish them. It will also be made known to them that this is due to their keeping away from the truth. Even at that, one will still supplicate for them in their absence that they should return to the right path. A hadith of Abu Hurairah mentions that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah the Mighty and Exalted created the creatures. When he had finished with that, kinship arose. So we're talking here about the actual, what's called the raham. Raham is the womb. So it's translated here as kinship. What it really means is the actual womb. How did this womb rise and speak? Allahu A'lam, this is from the matters of the ghaib. But we know that when Allah or His Messenger tell us about something, we do not delve into the how and why. It doesn't make sense, these kind of shaitan thoughts. The hadith mentions, authentic hadith, that kinship arose. Allah said, stop. It said, this is the opportunity for one seeking refuge with you from being cut off. Allah said, are you not content that I should maintain connections with the one who maintains connections with you, and that I should cut off the one who severs from you? It said, yes, indeed, my Lord. He said, you have that. Then Abu Hurairah said, if you wish, you can recite the verse. Would you then, if you were given the command, work corruption in the land and sever your ties of kinship? Chapter 47, verse 22. So this hadith is evidence that kinship, the actual womb, spoke in the real sense by Allah's permission, and that it gets angry and becomes pleased. It also is evidence that speech is from the action-related attributes of Allah, the Almighty and Exalted, and that severing the ties of kinship brings about Allah's wrath on the offender, and with Allah is refuge. As Sheikh Aziz, he mentioned that many of the scholars say that the biggest evil and the biggest fasad, mischief and corruption on earth is when people cut off their ties of their relatives. And the scholars also say that we know from the teachings of Islam that the punishment for one who does that comes in the dunya before the akhirah. And the final hadith for today, which is which actually we'll finish on this, because this one is a hadith of weak chain, and it basically comes to the same message of the previous hadith, inshallah. What we'll do now is we will check, inshallah, for the questions. After my father passed away, my father's relatives aren't really interested in keeping in touch. My father was very close to his elder sister, but after the death of my aunt and dad, aunt's children don't like to contact or respond back when we do. Should we still continue to call them? Yes. As long as you call, if you mentioned, I don't know if you were here, but in the previous classes, we mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ الْوَاصِلْ بِالْمُكَافِئ, that the person, the wasil, which means the person who keeps family ties, is not the one who does so like he's paying back his relatives, meaning because they contact him, he contacts them. That's not what is in Islam the real person who's keeping family ties. In fact, the real person who's keeping family ties is the one who contacts the ones who cut him off. So yes, maybe you don't keep every single week, but maybe every month, try and give them a call. They don't answer you, you send them a message. And then they will be to blame, and you'll be, inshallah, you'll be rewarded, and you'll not be blameworthy, inshallah. Can we call our parents dad and mum? Sure. If it happens to be in your culture, dad and mum seem to be a bit rude, and it's become like an imitation of the Westerners, and it's kind of frowned upon in your culture, then yeah, you should avoid it. It's better to say them ummi or abi or whatever it may be in your language. If dad and mum is not really acceptable, because even in Islam, we have a principle, like a maxim, a principle of fiqh, which is that the al-adu muhakkima, like the the custom can be used as a ruling, meaning if there's something in a custom that doesn't go against Islam, then it can be used as a not as a proof, but it can be used as something to go by, something you judge by. So if in a particular culture, for example, growing long hair as a man is seen as a feminine thing and no one really does it, then the scholars will say in this case, it is, if it's not impermissible, it is highly makruh, because it will make you stand out in society and make you look weird, and it will make people think you're one of those, for example, feminine-like men. So here they would say it goes by the urf, by the custom of the people. So if dad and mum in your background is considered to be a bit like disrespectful, then you should stick to the traditional way of calling them. Yes, even if they're non-believers, makes no difference. Makes no difference, even if they're non-believers. As you can see, we're going through this book, it mentions these things, even if they're non-believers. Even better if they're non-believers, in the sense of it can be a dawah for them as well, that they see, how is this person keeping in contact with me? And we're not even Muslim. The voice is too low, I don't know about that, because no one else seems to have mentioned it. How do you advise elders if they make a mistake in deen? With wisdom, with wisdom. We are told even when we call non-Muslims, ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good words, and debate in a way that is better. So you have to advise them very gently. You have to understand, elders will always look at you like younger than them, I guess you could say less knowledgeable than them. So it has to be done with hikmah and not so much pressure. Maybe you can tell them once. If they still continue, maybe take a while back and then go again in the future and try and advise them again. Can a daughter call and maintain kinship ties with her dad's young sons from a second wife? Wouldn't they be, they would be her brothers, right? Can a daughter of a man, call and maintain kinship ties with her dad's young sons from second wife? So maybe you mean the sons that from a second wife that was already married and had young sons? If they're not like her brothers basically, and her father married a second wife who already had children, if that's what you mean, it's not quite clear. Then if they're very young, yes, but when they get older, she shouldn't be calling them. Maybe at family occasions they pass by each other while the men are going to the men's area, the women are going to the women's area, they just say Assalamu alaikum, how you doing, and that's it, kind of thing. Again, that's the same question here. What's the same answer? What's the ruling on maintaining ties with cousin of opposite gender? There's no calling, there's no Facebook, how you doing? There's no like chatting like that. It's literally just, you can say, give salam to my cousin. You say to your brother, give salam to my, male cousins or my female cousins. Or if you happen to be passing in a family event, you can just quickly say like Assalamu alaikum, like that. But no real chatting and conversation and laughing and smiling. And because at the end of the day, you can get married, right? So that's where the issue comes in. Okay, someone says here, how to overcome, this is a very long topic, I can only give a very brief suggestion. How to overcome the weakness of being over emotional, loose tongue, getting hurt easily, and reacting on things instead of being calmed down and respond in a respectful manner with low sound. You're talking about generally or with your parents? It's with your parents, you have to just remember these hadith we mentioned before, on like what a big sin it is. And you literally need to say to yourself, come on, these are my parents, and just need to hold it in. Hold it in, of course, making dua, that Allah helps you in this. Maybe the more you read and study about these kind of things to do with parents, the more you read Quran, the more make you a bit more calm, a bit more less emotional. That's what I can say in this kind of short period of time. The part of the womb, this is when Allah created the womb. The womb kind of stood up and protested about the fact that that people will cut off ties of relation, and this was one of those things of the ghaib. So Allah mentioned there, is it not enough that those people who keep ties with you, meaning what comes out of you, the womb, meaning their family, that I will keep ties with them? And the ones who cut you off, as in like what comes out of you, their family, they cut their family off, Allah will cut them off, meaning the relationship between them and Allah is severed, just like they've severed their relationship with their relatives. See the seriousness here? I've answered that one about the male cousins, I'm a sister, it's the same as the one above. The Prophet ﷺ, had different styles of hair. I remember I read as well that he used to have like 2 plaits, but this is out of custom. It's not out of it's not out of something that is considered to be ibadah if we do it. Some scholars say that if you do it because you want to be like the Prophet ﷺ, you may, inshallah, you'll be rewarded for it. But generally speaking, certain clothing he wore, certain hairstyles he did, they are not generally coming under the things where you do it, it's considered worship, generally speaking. So there was different styles of hair the Prophet ﷺ had. But if you're in a society where no one has that kind of hair, apart from a certain group of people, then this is where you're supposed to avoid these kind of things. You just have to be the person is saying here, I not too many now. My mother does have a good relationship, I think she does not, maybe she means have a good relationship with me. Even when my nephew died, she didn't inform me. When my brother got married, she didn't invite me. I listened to her by getting married to the guy she selected. I don't have a father, he is deceased. Then, you have to just be good to her. If she's not good to you and you're good to her, again, this is the real reward. So just remember, every time she's a bit harsh with you, or she doesn't really respond to you, she doesn't really reply to you properly, she seems to keep you out, just you increasing your goodness to her. And this is this is the real reward. And I remember Sheikh Aziz in the same book that, as I mentioned, that I studied with the Sheikh, in one of the questions, someone said to him, like, my father does this, he treats me badly, he does this, he does that. Should I answer back? The Sheikh said, no, don't answer back. Whatever he's doing that's wrong, he will stand before Allah and be judged by that. But he said, don't you fall into the same mistake by you cutting him off, or you being rude back to him, or you being far from him. You do what you do, you get amazing reward. He does what he does, or she does what she does, and they will be judged by Allah based upon this. If you have a medical reason where you can't speak to your mom, that's fine. And even your mom would understand that, right? From this acid reflux. As long as you talk to her in a way, and you can even say to her, if she doesn't already know, which I'm sure she does, you can say to her, mother, I'm trying to, but I'm sure there must be times you can speak, right? I mean, I'm not an expert in acid reflux, but I don't think it's a continuous all day long. There must be times where you can, maybe you can study, work, talk to your friends. So you try to do it. If you're not with your mother, I'm assuming she's in a different country, a different house, then at least you should try and do it like every 2 or 3 days. But yeah, it's definitely important to send messages. Yes, both maternal and paternal cousins are identical. They're both non-mahram. You can marry both of them. Are children males from father's second wife one's mahram? If they are your father's children, yes, they are mahram. But if they are children from the second wife she had before she married the father, then no, they're no blood relations. What should be done in the case where the person keeps ignoring you and avoiding you in spite of you trying to maintain it? You keep maintaining it. Based upon the hadith we mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who keeps family ties is not the one who keeps family ties with those who keep ties with them. Is the one who is truly the one who keeps family ties in the sight of Allah, is the one who keeps in contact with those who cut them off. Okay, mother-in-law is not quite the same. She's not literally like your mother. So the obligation in keeping in contact so frequently is less. So if there's some tension, then you can avoid it. And just when you see each other at family events, you just say hi, you be nice to her, and that's it. Yeah, someone says it's very difficult to teach regarding the parents respecting children don't attend these life. Well, of course, if no one's learning and there are classes that people aren't attending and they're not being taught at home, you can't really do much because there are, like this class, for example, is available. But if people aren't attending, or the parents at home aren't teaching their children the right manners, then that's a problem. It starts with them teaching their children these manners and letting their children learn about Islam. Otherwise, of course, they won't. I reverted and was disowned. I think I'm going to have to finish soon. I was reverted and was disowned by my father. My mum was amazing, but I lost her already. And I got married and converted my brother, which makes matters worse, and tried to communicate, but turned out even worse and scary in that case. What will I do, please? I would say you probably should be okay to contact them by message. I mean, if you say that someone might come and physically attack you or something because you contact them, then maybe that's a different case. You have to judge it, safety wise. But if it's just that they get aggressive, then maybe you can try like once a month. If it's really bad, once a month you can try and send them like a WhatsApp message or a text message, but never completely cut them off. Okay, I don't know if I'll answer this. Let me have a quick look. Sheikh, this question is out of topic. I apologize for asking anything. Can a man marry a widow Muslim when the man's family isn't agreeing to that woman? But that man needs to help that woman and her children out. What's the ruling? And can the woman go against her family as her family wants to get married to a disbeliever? Okay, for the man, he should try, if he really thinks this is the right person, to convince his mother and father. This is a very long topic. Many of the scholars, they say, look, there are many, like as they say, there are many fish in the sea, right? That the man shouldn't go against his parents to the extent where he will ruin his family's, his mother and father's relationship because of a woman, because that comes first. Again, it's a topic that needs more discussion. It's not, I can't fully answer it here. Definitely the woman could go against her family if they want her to marry a disbeliever. There's no doubt about that. It's haram. If she married a disbeliever and she's a Muslim, it won't be marriage. It will be zina. So in that case, of course, she can, she shouldn't marry a disbeliever. Again, Fatima, I answered earlier, when it comes to the male cousins, you can pass salams on through your male relatives. If you happen to be passing by each other, maybe in a family gathering, you can just say, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? And that's it. No like real chatting and stuff. There is no mahram of a stepbrother. Stepbrother is not a mahram for the stepsisters or brothers, because there's no real true relationship. Who can be a wali for your wedding when you are a revert female? It would have to be someone from the Muslim community, or if you're in a Muslim country like Emirates, they have judges who you go to in the court and they take the role of the wali, to my knowledge. My father married a second wife after my mother. Would the children male from the other mother be my mahram? Okay, if your father married a second wife, right, and then she gave birth to children that your father is the father of them, of course, because they are your brothers and sisters. They're your half brothers and sisters. They come from your father. Any children who come from either your father or your mother are your brothers and sisters, therefore your mahram. Is being married to my ex-wife, brother's wife forbidden? Is it okay? So my wife, don't get that. Hang on. Is being married to my ex-wife brother's wife? If it was your brother-in-law's wife and they're divorced and you're divorced from your wife, there's no issue because there's no relation between the two. Ex-brother's wife. Yeah, it was your brother-in-law's wife. He divorced her. You divorced your wife. You're two separate. I mean, if from an Islamic perspective, that description is fine. Okay, then the sister said they tried killing me, so this is obviously a very serious situation. You do your best. I would say even send them a letter from time to time. Don't put your don't put your address. They don't know where it came from. I don't know where you live. You live in the West. You live in wherever you are. If it's in the West where they can, you have a post box that tells you the area. Drive 20 minutes or drive to the next town or something. Once every 6 months or something. Write them a letter. That will be my advice. Okay, inshallah, barakallahu feekum. Whatever I've said today, which is correct, is from the blessings of Allah. Whatever I've said that may be incorrect is from myself and from the shaitan. And inshallah, till next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.